Hi folks, it's Zach, and welcome back to my Star Wars Tips and Tricks section, and today we're looking at the top 10 things all Star Wars The Old Republic players should do at least once in Star Wars The Old Republic. This is a very subjective list, but these are my top 10 choices of things that I feel are unforgettable, completely memorable, and things that absolutely under no circumstances should be missed by any player, whether that be free to play or full subscription. So guys, without further ado, hang on tight, and we're going to start with number 10. First up is the Eternity Vault. This was the first operation that was made for Star Wars The Old Republic, and arguably, in my opinion, one of the best. There was so much time and effort that was put into this particular raid. Now, what are the key features of the Eternity Vault? Well, besides being the first raid in SWTOR, it has an unforgettable entrance sequence of you rocketing down to the surface of the planet in these escape pods. It has an unforgettable final boss called SOA, where it combines not only the boss mechanics of your traditional tank, DPS, and healing, but also this incredible platforming mechanic. And then, of course, last but not least, there is an incredibly high amount of nostalgia factor. If you have played Star Wars The Old Republic since early times, then you've probably played this, but if you've never played it, when you go into this, you can understand what hooked a lot of us players in for such a long period of time. The Eternity Vault is truly one of the most iconic raids in the game, and aside from some of the later fights like fighting Revan, I would say that this is one of those ones that absolutely under no circumstances should be missed. You will never regret going into the Eternity Vault. It is just the most incredible mix of combat, of puzzling, and of platforming that you're going to find in almost any raid ever. And yeah, it definitely sets itself apart from all the rest. Speaking of setting things apart, next up is romancing Kira Carsen. Of all the romantic interests in the game, I found Kira Carsen to be the absolute most irresistible character that you can romance in Star Wars The Old Republic. She's completely and intrinsically tied into the Jedi Knight's plot for the first half of the game or so. And the voice actress, Laura Bailey, has one of the most amazing voices you'll ever hear. She can literally melt butter from across a room. Her voice is so good. Now, Kira Carsen, if you don't know her, she's basically what the perfect woman would be if a woman could be designed by a bunch of Star Wars nerds. She uses the Force, she has a snarky sense of humor, she's got a bit of a small rebellious streak, and she does sometimes occasionally play the damsel in distress. And with all of that mixed together, she also has this amazing, mix of vulnerability and capability. It's a really interesting play. If there's anybody that you're going to want to be a Jedi and go off the reservation for, Kira Carsen definitely tops that list. She's an unforgettable romance, and she's the reason I have so many Guardians and Sentinels. So guys, if you have never romanced Kira Carsen, get out there and do so. Also, I would also add, if Kira Carsen doesn't end up being your cup of tea, go ahead and romance some of the other romance options in the game. They're so worth it. It adds a layer of depth to your character and another area of roleplay that you get to experience. It's so unique to Star Wars as a game to be able to do this, and so you gotta take advantage of it. Next up, we have getting HK-51 as a companion. HK-51 is actually the legacy character to HK-47. If you played Knights of the Old Republic or Knights of the Old Republic 2, then you know that HK-47 is one of the companions you recruit during that questline. And this takes place about 300 years before what we know as, Star Wars The Old Republic. HK-47 set himself apart from any other droid you've ever met in the Star Wars universe because unlike being a butler or an engineer or something like that, he was a straight-on assassin. He had a complete disdain towards humanity, and he was at your disposal for all assassination purposes. He was awesome. So there's actually in Star Wars The Old Republic a unique quest line to get him because when he came around, it wasn't like you could collect companions like Pokemon like you have now. So he has his own unique quest line that's equal parts scavenger hunt and combat encounters. And then he also, once you have him, has some of the most unique dialogue in the game, and his perspective is unlike any other companion you're ever going to meet out there. Plus, mechanically, he has his own unique DPS style that even though they've made all these changes to companions and you can change them into anything you want, his DPS moves are different than any of the other companions out there. So that makes him valuable no matter which way you slice it. So guys, if you've never gone through the quest line to get HK-51, I highly recommend it. And plus, once you have him unlocked on one character, you can unlock him on any other character you want on your legacy for just a few cartel coins. So guys, HK-51, there's no reason not to get him, and if you've never gotten him before, I highly recommend the experience. Now, speaking of collections, I gotta make a mention here for Datacron collecting and getting all the Datacrons in the game. I actually kind of ignored Datacrons for most of the game when I first started, and just would kind of go after them, you know, whenever I felt like it, because the stats at the time would only benefit the character who found the Datacron. Well, that all changed a few patches ago, and now any Datacron you find extends to your entire legacy. So there's no reason not to go out and hunt them all down, because your entire legacy's worth of characters will benefit from them. And at the end of the day, it's actually a pretty significant chunk of stats towards your mastery, your presence, and your endurance. Also, I would mention that the cool thing about the Datacrons is that besides the useful stats boosting, each Datacron hunt is either a mix of platforming or area discovery or puzzle solving, and it shows an extremely different side of the game that the game designers went ahead and put in. It's really easy to ignore it if you just want to come in and play the storyline, but I highly recommend not skipping it. It actually adds a ton of value to your character, and it gets you into places in the game that you may not have even known existed. Also, I would add as my final tip to this is that once you get dedicated to hunting down all the Datacrons, it really actually does not take a whole lot of time. You can really get it done within a couple days, a week tops. There's only one or two that actually require other players, and there's only one I can think of that actually requires an entire group, which is the one pictured here, which is either side, Republic or Imperial's fleet Datacron. But you get one of them, counts for both, and you're all set to go. So guys, don't miss out. Make sure you get those benefits rolling to you, because hey, it extends your whole legacy. Why wouldn't you? There's not a lot of things that make my palms sweat in Star Wars The Old Republic, but the Shroud's questline definitely fits the bill. So, a lot of people don't actually know about the questline because it's not built into any single-player story campaign, it's not built into a raid. It was actually a sideline quest that you could do when the Rise of the Hutt Cartel came out. You'd get this device called a macro binocular and you could run around different planets scanning towers. It was kind of felt like a lot of busy work, but the payoff for it was actually incredible. There's actually two unique sequences in the game, like the one you're seeing pictured here, where you're actually on Nar Shaddaa, jumping from car to car, platforming from ship to ship, and trying not to fall off and die at high speeds. There's not a lot of things, like I said, that make me nervous, but this is one of those things that makes me nervous. It's such a unique set piece in the game that never gets repeated anywhere else in the game. Never anywhere else do you get a chance to do this type of action again, which is one of the things that makes this so unique, so valuable, and so worth doing. Now, there's actually a sequence that happens after this. What you're seeing here is actually not the end of the questline. There's actually one more four-person flashpoint that you can do afterwards, that as a group you actually go through several different puzzle trap rooms to go ahead and get to the final boss. If you guys have never experienced the Shroud's questline, it is a must-have, must-do in Star Wars The Old Republic, because there's really nothing else out there like it. Yes, I agree, there is some busy work, but the payoffs that you get when you fight the different bosses and go through these different set pieces make for some of the most unforgettable moments you'll ever have in Star Wars The Old Republic, and that is why it makes this list. Now, anyone who knows me knows that zombies are my kryptonite, which is why Kaon Under Siege had to be on this list. Kaon Under Siege is one of the most moody and atmospheric instances in the entire game, and it's basically the Star Wars version of Night of the Living Dead. There is a Rakghoul outbreak on the planet Kaon, and you and your team must go in there and face this scourge head on. This is not your typical flashpoint. This is one of the most memorable sequences of events that you'll ever see in this game. The storyline is awesome, and there's actually even one memorable boss sequence where you're not even really fighting a boss. You're literally just having your buddy or yourself in a turret facing wave after wave after wave of Rakghoul-infected people. It is unbelievable. So if you guys are in the mood for something truly different, you've got to do Kaon Under Siege. I guarantee you'll never regret it. One of the major complaints in Star Wars The Old Republic is that the PvE experience is just not tough enough, that you never really fight anything you can't really handle, and to some extent I really agree about that. But that's actually one of the reasons why I really feel that the Eternal Championship was such a great addition in Knights of the Fallen Empire. This is a single player experience, which is basically giving you the same concepts of like a rating 101 class without the penalty of having other players around you die. Most of the flashpoints now have been reduced to tactical flashpoints as you level, and you can come in there with pretty much any design or makeup and pretty much get through it. And even if you don't have your full spec or your full abilities, or even really know how to fully play your class, you can basically get through all of it. That's not necessarily the case with the Eternal Championship. The first 5 rounds are pretty easy, but then rounds 5 through 10 really kick it up a notch, and you're going to have to start really understanding what it means to work under pressure, work on the fly, and manage your companion in a really effective way. The great things about this is that it gives you a proving ground for specs you haven't tried out or gear setups you haven't tried out, and puts it into a live fire combat situation where there are some stakes involved. If you die, there are repair bills, but if you win, there's also some rewards there too that kind of offset those costs. For a lot of us who raid, going and hitting a dummy to find out your DPS is great. But if you're a tank or a healer, there sometimes just is no way for you to really challenge yourself outside of being in a raid and actually just doing that job. The great thing about the Eternal Championship is that anybody can step in here and have a really unique experience of going through all 10 rounds and really trying out exactly what their spec is all about. So let's start with the question, who is Revan? Revan is the central figure of Knights of the Old Republic, and then in this game, Star Wars The Old Republic, there's actually several flashpoints where we'll actually run into this character on Imperial or Republic side. But who is he? We have a whole expansion named after him. I don't want to spoil everything for you, but what I am going to say is that you at some point as a player must fight Revan. There's 2 really great opportunities to do so. One, if you're a raider, there's actually an entire raid where he is the end boss, and that's the Temple of Sacrifice. And then if you just want to do this in the PvE story version, you can do that too. Either encounter is completely unforgettable. They are 2 excellent set-piece fights that if you're doing it for the PvE story, you're not going to have too much trouble, but I guarantee you the way they build up to that fight is pretty memorable. And if you're doing it as a raid, the raid version of this fight has some of the most unforgettable mechanics and unforgiving mechanics of any raid fight out there. Either way, if you're just in this to be casual or if you're in here to raid, you've got to find a way to fight Revan at some point in this game. I guarantee you it's worth it. When people think of Star Wars The Old Republic, they think of the story. And when you think of what is the best storyline in the game, without a doubt, it is the Imperial Agent storyline. It's not one of the go-tos that a lot of people reach for immediately. A lot of people reach for a Jedi or a Sith because, they think that wielding a lightsaber and having a lightsaber and force powers is really cool. And it is. However, when it comes to storytelling, nothing beats the Imperial Agent storyline. The Imperial Agent storyline is the deepest and most intricate storyline of the entire game that is so deep it actually includes multiple endings. And it also dares to hold a mirror up to the Sith methodology of infighting. This storyline has intrigue, it has secret societies, and a paranoid storyline that keeps you wondering who you can trust from start to finish. There's no other storyline in the game that goes to that depths, and you've got to try it at least once. If you want to be a true Star Wars player in Star Wars The Old Republic, at some point you've got to do this questline just to see what all the fuss is about. It is amazing, and I guarantee you're going to want to play it more than once. Now, last but not least on the list is the Jedi Knight storyline. Now, you may be wondering, hey Zach, why is this on here if you said that the Agent storyline is the best? Why would this be number 1? Well, the Jedi Knight storyline, in a lot of ways, is basically KOTOR 3. If you played Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Jedi Knight storyline really feels like it's the successor storyline. Out of all 8 storylines in the game, this is the one that ends up feeling the most canon. It's the most traditional light versus dark storyline, and the ending sets up the events for the next several expansions. I don't want to ruin it for you. If you've never played the game, I encourage you to get in there and see what the quest is all about. It'll make sense once you see it. But Knights of the Fallen Empire makes the most sense if you actually came to it as a Jedi Knight storyline. All the dialogue between the major characters works a lot better if you have the Jedi Knight's background and history behind you of your rise and fall, your experiences with the dark side, and your experiences with your end boss. So, if you guys are looking for an amazing storyline that feels the most Star Warsian of them all, you gotta play the Jedi Knight. So that's it, guys. That's my top 10. If you guys agree, please like and subscribe. If you just enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe as well. Those 2 things let me know that you guys are enjoying the content and want to see me create more for you. Now, if you guys felt like, hey, Zach, I had this really cool moment in Star Wars and I think you may have missed it and I think it could have been on the list, put it in the comment area below. I'd love to know what your favorite moments were in Star Wars The Old Republic. We may even do a player's choice version of this video for you guys later. So guys, feel free to comment below, and I'll see you next time.